Hi, you guys. Welcome back. My name is Carrie Penny. I am the Happy Crafty Homemaker, and today we're going to do a second video in the yarns that I think are worth it category. And today we're going to be discussing Lion Brand woolies. Hopefully I won't double speak, or not double speak, but reiterate myself over and over again in this video like I did with the Premier Anti-Pilling, but this is kind of an off-the-cuff series. It's not something that I've got super planned out. This isn't a review of the yarn. This is just many years of experience using a product, seeing how it holds up, seeing how I like it, and knowing whether or not this product is worth having in your stash or maybe holding off on. So, Lion Brand woolies. This is another yarn I have used quite a bit of over the years. I don't have anything in the new label. I just have the old label. And this is actually even 2 labels ago. But this is one of my favorite colors. When I found it in worsted, it used to come in the woolly sock. And I did use that. And let me tell you, if I could find those socks that just warm the other day, I would be showing those to you. But I think they're in the dirty clothes. And I wasn't going to show you dirty socks. But this used to come in the sockies and absolutely adored it. I love this colorway. I do have it now in the worsted weight. This one is Blue Mist, and they do not have anything quite like that anymore. I just love those refracts of pink. This will eventually one day be a sweater. I'm actually thinking cardigan sweater. But I love this yarn. I love that particular colorway. But I actually really like the yarn. Now, the sock yarn from Lion Brand is not the same as this anymore. It used to be the exact same yarn, just in a different weight. It's not the same anymore. So I would not, we'll talk about that in a separate, it's not that I wouldn't recommend it, but it's just not the same anymore. The worsted weight yarn, though, more or less is still the same thing I've been using a lot of for the last 16 years. This hat is one that I knit many years ago. It is a Fair Isle hat. And I have always machine washed on cold and air dried. And that is definitely how I would recommend caring for this yarn. Now this one says it's, I have this one, and then I have some of the hand-dyed woolies as well. If you remember, I just frogged a sweater that I was working on because I lost too much weight to continue. 80% acrylic, 20% wool, machine wash, warm, tumble dry, normal. I would not tumble dry this. 100% would air dry this. The wool in this will kind of felt if you wash it on hot and dry it in the dryer. I do have a couple of projects that have been machine washed and dried over the years. I'm not quite sure where they are. Like my poncho, which is one of my earliest projects I ever did. I'm not quite sure where that is, but it was a drop stitch knit poncho. You knit a big rectangle, and on the last row you did all these drop stitches. So you had this laddering that showed up, and it gave it this really ruffly kind of texture. There are a number of patterns that call for drop stitches. So if you've seen one, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then you you wrap it and sew the ends. I wore it for many, many years. It was in the color Woodlands, which was a garnet, forest green, and that one it was navy blue, but it kind of red black. So blue, green, and garnet. It was beautiful, beautiful. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Got a lot of wear out of it, but it did start to look pretty questionable. This is almost as old as that poncho, but I cared for this completely differently. So I did want to mention the care on this. I would definitely recommend not putting this in the dryer and only washing it on cold. If you put a whole lot of effort into something, you want to care for it the best way possible. And because this wool did kind of felt up a little bit, air dry it. Do not put it through your machine dryer. Even on cold, I would say the agitation is probably too much for this wool over time. It's not going to felt the first time you wash it and dry it. You're just going to start noticing that it gets pills, and the wool content in this will kind of felt. And that's not just true of the older stuff. I've noticed that with each iteration of it, it's the same. The twist and plies on this has been the same for the last at least 10 years. Does this have a date on it? No, this is not a dated skein. I really like that Bernat does that, because it's really fun to backtrack the ages of some of my yarns. I don't mark these with years that I bought them like I do my paper pads. But you can see, I mean, it's a nice twist. It's not overly tight, but with the combination of wool and acrylic, it is fairly durable. It's not itchy because you do have the lower wool content in this. This is one of the yarns that I recommend your first sweater be with. It's not overly expensive at $3.69, I think. No, $4.69, regular price, onlinebrand.com. It's not something that is cost prohibitive to make a sweater with. I do prefer my sweaters to have some natural fiber content. That's not to say all of my sweaters have natural fiber content, but in particularly, I live in a humid climate. I am a sweaty person. I'm just gonna call it like it is. I sweat. I don't glow. I sweat. So for me, in particularly, having a small amount of wool, alpaca, or cotton in a garment, even if it's 80-20, it's only 20% natural fiber, gives me just enough aeration. The fabric breathes just enough that it's not sweatier than a garment needs to be for where I live. And that is also true for more northern climates. Just because you're not necessarily humid, the last thing you want is to sweat in your clothes and feel stagnant in your clothes, because that can, increase odds of hypothermia and stuff like that. Just one of those weird tidbits. But I think because of the way this holds up, it holds up beautifully. It does have a good stitch definition. It doesn't require any finicky care. The only thing I have not done with this that I have done in a project is steeking, which is when you knit like a sweater in the round and then you sew up across 2 different rows and then cut the fabric in half so it lays open. So like those beautiful Fair Isle cardigans you see, a lot of those have been steeked open, and then you pick up stitches on the edge and then do your placket and collars and stuff like that. I have not steeked this yarn before. I've done Fair Isle with it. I have done intarsia with it. I have straight knit it. I have done it in cables. I have done directional projects with it. I've done hats, sweaters. That would have been the perfect thing to go find, is my mushroom sweater. I shared that in one of my walks down memory lane, I believe. That is a very old project, and it still looks pretty good. Now, I haven't worn it in many years because it's way too small for me now, but it was very, very, very heavily used. There is some felting in the underarm region just from arm motion. This, if you care for it very gently and you do not, put it in the dryer, it does not wear through super fast. So I've made gloves with it. I've made worsted weight socks with it. Like I said, I use the original sockies or woolly sock to make a pair of socks out of it. That was one of my earliest pairs of socks. Worked up beautifully. I mean, those socks are 12 years old at least, and they have been thrown through the washer and dryer. I haven't had a problem with the socks, but that did have a slightly different wool in it. It did not feel quite the same, or maybe it was just spun a little bit tighter. It's more or less the exact same as the worsted weight, but maybe it was just spun tighter. But those have been worn. They're one of my go-to pairs of socks, and they're still absolutely beautiful. I know both of my parents have worsted weight house socks that have been made out of this, and they still haven't worn through after more than 3 years. I have a pair of house socks made out of these that haven't worn through. My husband has a pair of house socks that have not worn through, and those, I know mine and his, they're both, once again, probably at least 10 years old. We wear them, once or twice a week during the winter, so it's not like they're every single day. The fingerless gloves I made with these turned out great. Mittens turned out wonderful. To me, this was one of those yarns that when I could afford it, once again, I had a very meager budget starting out. So this was the first yarn where I felt like I was really buying something fancy. But it just really works up well, and it holds up well. It has great stitch definition. It shows texture really well. It blocks nicely. So if you want to do something with some open lace work, I actually steam those projects. So I treat it, in blocking, I treat it like an acrylic because it is 80% acrylic. In how I work with it, I treat it like a wool. The projects I would make out of wool, I would still use this for it. There's just enough wool content in this that it behaves like the best of both worlds. Yeah, it says a soft, warm blend of lamb's wool and easy care acrylic. It's really nice. I really enjoy it, and I've used it for many years. I've done, once again, blankets. I would not do anything for a baby under probably like 15 months out of it, just because wool in general can be irritating to baby skin. I try to stick to acrylic and cotton for infants under the age of 12. If you're trying to do like a baby blanket that's going to be an heirloom piece that's not really going to be used for burping and spitting and playtime on the floor, yeah, you're probably safe using this yarn. Because it has wool content, one of the things I did want to mention about this is it does seem to be color fast. I've never had a problem with bleeding, and I've never had a problem with fading in anything I've made with this yarn. So it does seem to behave a little bit more like an acrylic when it comes to the color fastness and stability of the color with wear and time. I mean, if you look at that's the outside of the hat, and this has been well worn and well used. I have another one that went through the dryer quite a bit, but I can't find my Ring of Fire hat. I think that's another one that I have shared in Walks Down Memory Lane in the past. I mean, you can see that that rose color is the same on the inside and the outside. And it's been, like I said, it's been worn heavily. It's been well cared for, but it has been heavily used. Didn't use it as much this year because I prefer longer hats. I like to cover my ears more now. But there was a time where I was a little bit more into my fashion and a little less into keeping warm. And I got a lot of use out of this hat. I'm not ready to get rid of it. It's still so cute. I'm so proud of how that turned out. That was in my zone of my first 8 Farrell projects. So, $85 grams. This one is 100 grams. So they are coming in different size balls now, or at least the hanks. This was 100 grams, 146 yards. It calls for an 8 or K, size 8 needles, K hook. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those weird yarns that it's a workhorse. Back to what I was saying about sweaters. Because it breathes and because it is easy to work with, it frogs really easily from crochet and knitting. For that price point at $5 a ball, like, that's pretty reasonable for making a sweater, I think. If you're going to put in the time and energy to having a garment that you've made, you really need to make sure you're using something you're going to enjoy wearing and it's going to drape. This has a nice drape on the body. And you want to make sure you're going to feel good wearing it because this is a labor of love. and you want to make sure it's good for you. So this is a really good starter point for when you're ready to start doing garments and you want to kind of have a nice quality piece you're going to wear for an extended period of time. Now, that's not saying, once again, you can't do 100% acrylic sweaters and have beautiful pieces that last a long time. But, and I mean, I've got acrylic sweaters. I've made acrylic sweaters. I love my acrylic sweaters. They do get a little bit warm. And it's a stagnant warm, not a air moving through kind of thing. So I do recommend having some form of natural fiber in your sweater yarns. Personal thing. I don't do 100% wool sweaters. I generally go for something like woolies. I would probably go for something, like the Karen cotton cakes where they're a 40-60 or 50-50. This is a 20-80. Just to have that. But acrylic is so durable and it holds up so well. Wash after wash, it holds up to the weight of a project. Things like sweaters can become very weighty and heavy, so you don't want like your shoulders to start pulling down on the body and having so much stretch that it becomes misshapen on the body. This does reshape very nicely when you, like I said, you can machine wash it cold. Air dry it. And when you air dry it, lay it out into the shape you want the sweater to take on. This does actually do a really nice job at laying flat to dry in that blocked, semi-blocked position. That's a personal thing. It's a personal thing, but it's a... Now, unfortunately, this is a wool content yarn. So if you have an animal fiber allergy, this will not be a good yarn for you. It is wool. It's soft wool. It's perfectly fine around the décolletage area and stuff. It is a soft wool. It is a great yarn. But if you have a wool allergy, definitely not the fiber for you. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this series so far. I don't know how many more I'm going to have examples of things that have been well worn and well used, because there are some newer yarns I do want to discuss and talk about, but we will be covering a wide selection of things. If there is something you want me to talk about specifically, please let me know in the comments down below, or feel free to send me a message on Instagram or in my email, which are also listed in the description box below. In no way, shape, or form is this content sponsored by any of the yarn manufacturers I will be discussing. Once again, I'm a small channel, and these manufacturers have no clue who I am. So occasionally when I tag them in something, they might see it. But by and large, these companies have no clue who I am. So anyway, take care, you guys. I love you. Once again, I love hearing your questions and comments. Let me know anything you want to put in. And I would love to know what you have made with woolies. So, let me know what kind of projects you enjoy with this yarn too. I love you, and I'll see you real soon. Bye, guys.